Where is Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Madison. My name is Kelly Asprooth-Jackson, and I am one of the ministers here. It is a great joy to welcome you to our annual celebration of the Flower Communion. Today, I am joined by my colleague, the Reverend Kelly Crocker, virtually, and by the worship team of Drew Collins, Heather Thorpe, and Daniel Carnes, by special guest musicians Emmett Tom, Jennifer Yancey, Tamara Brugnano, and Julie Collins, and by our teen and children's choirs. The vision of FUS is growing souls, connecting with one another, and embodying our UU values in our lives, our community, and in our world. For those connecting with us virtually today, we are glad that you are with us as well, as we hope that you will be able to join us for our virtual coffee hour immediately following our service. The information for joining can be found on the homepage of our website, fusmadison.org, as well as on the slide that will be seen again after the postlude. Our announcement slides will also be shown briefly after today's service, and we encourage you to take a moment and learn about upcoming programs and activities. If you are visiting with us today, welcome. We are so very glad that you are with us. And if you would like more information about First Unitarian Society, please stop by the welcome table. It's located outside those doors in the Commons. And now, I invite you to join me in a moment of silence as we center ourselves and bring ourselves fully into this time as we join together once again in community. What a gathering. The purple tongues of iris licking out at spikes of lupine, the orange crepe skirts of poppies lifting over buttercup and daisy. Who can be grim in the face of such abundance? There is nothing to compare, no need for beauty to compete. The voluptuous rhododendron and the plain grass are equally filled with themselves, equally declare the miracles of color and form. This is what community looks like, this vibrant jostle stem by stem, declaring the marvelous joining. This is the face of communion, the incarnation once more gracefully resurrected from winter. Hold these things together in your sight. Purple, crimson, magenta, blue. You will be feasting on this long after the flowers are gone. And now I invite you to rise in all the ways that we do and join me in the words of aspiration for the kindling of our chalice. All around the world, the light of honest thought shines, showing people the path to their own authentic faith. All around the world, the warmth of community glows, drawing people in from loneliness and estrangement. All around the world, the flame of justice burns, inspiring people to acts of faith-filled courage. Here, too, may the light and warmth of this chalice be to us a beacon of truth, generosity, and compassion, that we may learn the ways of faith and love.
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty please join us in singing our opening hymn, number 305, De Coloris. All the colors, yes, the colors we see in the springtime with all of its flowers. All the colors, when the sunlight shines out through a rift in the clouds and it showers. All the colors, as a rainbow appears when a storm cloud is touched by the sun. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. All the colors, yes, the colors of people parading on by with their banners. All the colors, yes, the colors of pennants and streamers and plumes and bandanas. All the colors, yes, the colors of people now taking their place in the sun. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. All the colors, yes, the black and the white and the red and the brown and the yellow. All the colors of people who smile and shake hands and say hello. All the colors, yes, the colors of people who know that the freedom is won. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. De colores se visten los campos en la primavera. De colores son los pajaritos que vienen de afuera. De colores es el arco iris que vemos lucir. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí.
Always forget something. In June 1923, Norbert Čapek and his wife Maya created the flower ceremony in the Unitarian Congregation of Prague. Each member was asked to bring a single flower to the service, which began with the flowers being placed in a large vase in the middle of the hall. As he explained in his sermon that day, the flowers symbolize the members, each unique and free, joining together in fellowship and accepting each other regardless of their differences. At the end of the service, each member was to take one flower. Here I quote Norbert. Just as it comes without making any distinction where it came from and whom it represents, to confess that we accept each other as brothers and sisters without regards to class, race, or other distinction, acknowledging everybody as our friend who is human and wants to be good. Maya Čapek introduced the flower communion to the United States in the spring of 1940 at the First Parish Church in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It is now widely celebrated by Unitarian Universalist congregations pretty much everywhere. Soon after her husband's death, Maya Čapek wrote about what the flower ceremony meant to him. She wrote, "His only motivation was to stress and bring about brotherhood. As a symbol, he used flowers because, in the name of a flower, no war was ever waged." The flowers are used as symbols of the gifts which each person can make to the church and through the church to other persons. The exchange of flowers means that I shall walk without reservation, without anyone, regardless of social status or former religious affiliation, as long as they are ready and willing to go along in search of truth and service. And so, we offer you now an opportunity to participate further in the shared gifts of this religious movement. Some of us brought flowers with us from home today. Others hopefully had a chance to select a flower on their way into the auditorium. There remain a great many flowers to share just outside those doors, and there's another vase just outside the door to the balcony. So if you still need a flower, you have time. You can go get one now. In a moment, as we listen to music together, you'll be invited to come forward and contribute your flower to one of the vessels up front here. And there's another vessel at the rear of the balcony in case you don't want to come all the way down here. The gathering of flowers is meant to symbolize the beauty we create together by joining with one another in spiritual fellowship. At the close of the service, I hope that you will come forward after the postlude and select a new flower to take home with you. So that this symbolizes the way in which our different ideas, identities, and experiences, shared within the bonds of mutuality and right relationship, make each other's lives richer and more meaningful. Remember that the flower that you will hold in your hand as you leave today is a gift of a friend brought in good faith to this community, and a reminder of the history we inherit as we walk the paths of our spiritual journey. May these earthly symbols remind us of a deeper truth, that in the days of our joys and the days of our struggles, we are never truly alone. A blessing from Norbert Chapek. Infinite Spirit of life, we ask thy blessing on these messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us, amid diversities of knowledge and gifts, to be one in desire and affection, and devotion to good and beauty. May they also remind us of the need for sharing and cooperation in our common quest for understanding. May we cherish friendship and community as one of life's most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talents discourage or separate us. May we realize that the efforts of all of us, the goodwill of all of us, are needed to heal and transform our troubled world. May we be strengthened by the knowledge that one Spirit, the Spirit of love, unites us, and may we endeavor together for a more joyful life for all. Amen.
Hello. How much I would like to be there with you today to celebrate this flower communion. With an abundance of caution, my family has been exposed to COVID this past week. And so we decided that it would be best for me to record and still be a part of the service and be there with you in spirit. So the story I want to tell you today is the story of our partnership. There are stories that we like to tell time and again because they hold a precious meaning in their remembering. One such story is of our partnership with the Unitarian Church of Nagyajta. It is a village nestled in the Carpathian Mountains of Transylvania. You'll hear more of the background of this story, what led up to our partnership in a little bit. But for now, I wanted to tell you the piece of this that to me has always felt like a bit of magic. You see, when the Unitarian congregations of Transylvania were able to once again connect with Unitarian Universalist congregations here in North America, our congregation received a letter. It was from the minister of the Unitarian Church of Nagyajta, and included with it was this. You'll see the picture on your screen. Now, we've told this story many times, and this hangs in the partner church area where the atrium building joins with the landmark. But back in late 1991, no one here had any idea what this could be. Was it an incredibly fancy cheese board? Was it just a decorative wall hanging, a piece of folk art? They weren't sure what it could be. And they later discovered that it is a laundry paddle. And we'll get to why that's significant in a moment. Now, a delegation from this congregation, including ministers Max Gabler and Ruth Gibson, decided to travel to Nagyajta to meet these folks for the first time. Ruth wanted to bring something of this place with them. So she created 2 embroideries. You'll see that there's the image of the landmark building with its iconic prow and the words painted inside that auditorium. If you have a loaf of bread. Ruth created 2 of these, one with the words in English for us to keep here and remember, and one in Hungarian, which she brought with her as a gift to the congregation. When they arrived, here's what they learned. Transylvanian tradition is that if a person wishes to ask someone to marry them, to enter into a partnership, they would carve an elaborate laundry paddle to gift to the one they loved. If that person who received the laundry paddle wanted to accept this proposal, they would create an embroidery to gift in return, sealing their relationship. Our wonderful folks had no idea what they were doing when they traveled in 1992 to a village in the mountains. Yet we're so very glad they did. and that they enacted a traditional ritual partnership that has endured and grown and given life to both communities for many, many years. And we hope for many more years to come.
I invite you now into a time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering, which this week is dedicated entirely to our partner church program. Through your gifts, we will be able to continue supporting scholarships for high school students in the village, as there is no high school in Nagyajta, and students must attend the boarding school for their area. Room and board can be prohibitive for many in the village, and so our financial support is a great relief to families in Nagyajta. Your gifts will also help us support the congregation's music program, as well as educational field trips for the children of the parish. You will see on the screen that you can donate directly from our website, fusmadison.org, and you can also find there the text to give information. There are baskets as well at the exits to this room in which cash or checks may be placed. We thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we create together.
It is a joy to celebrate another flower communion with you, a time to remember not only our connection with one another, the beauty found in our uniqueness, but also to honor our connection with the Unitarian Church of Nagyajta, whom we've been partnered with since 1992. Perhaps you did the math when you were listening to the story earlier, and you realized that this year marks the 30th anniversary of that partnership. I love to pause at these times to remember the stories, much like the story of the laundry paddle and the embroidery, one you may have heard many times before. The stories of our shared history are precious memories that bear repeating. So let's begin in 1989 at the General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association, where a cry was heard from the Unitarians living in Romania. Many in the United States and Canada were unaware of our faith's beginnings in Transylvania and unaware of our Hungarian family of faith who desperately needed our help. For 24 years, Romania had been held in the grip of the dictator Nicolae Ceausescu. These were years of persecution, especially of ethnic minority groups such as the Hungarians, and of religious groups as well, such as the Unitarians. In those years, the only place the Transylvanian Hungarians could express their ethnicity and culture, or even feel safe to be themselves, was in church. The Romanian government believed the Transylvanians to be their number one enemy. And in each village, the mayor, chief of police, other local village officials were pressed into service by government officials to spy on their neighbors, report any suspicious activity to the state secret police. The cry heard by the North American Unitarian Universalists came at a time when the government announced the plan to level and destroy most of the Transylvanian villages, to reform the centuries-old pattern of family-owned farms throughout the region. The intention was to force the absorption of the minorities into homogenized communities in which Transylvanian minority children would lose their ethnic identities. 11 of the 14 Unitarian villages along the Big and Little Homerode rivers were scheduled for complete destruction. Those historic generations of churches and homes would be torn down, reduced to rubble, or flooded to make way for hydroelectric dams. The Unitarians were calling on us to stop it, to do what we could to be the voice of a people who, through decades of oppression and terror, had lost theirs. At that General Assembly, President Bill Schultz assembled a delegation to visit Ceausescu in January of 1990. That meeting never occurred as Ceausescu's government fell on December 22nd, 1989. He was assassinated. The UU delegation did go to Romania in 1990 to meet with the new hastily formed government, and they won the assurance of religious freedom, and they were granted the permission to communicate and visit with our partners once again. At the 1990 General Assembly, all congregations were invited to become a partner church. And fortunately for us, this congregation accepted that call. It took time to get the program established, to figure out how to connect one congregation to another. So distant we were in miles, so different we were in language and culture and theology. Now, before we continue on with that story, we need to travel back to the 1920s, when there was a sister church program between 116 Unitarian congregations in the US and Canada who were partnered with Unitarian congregations in Transylvania. These are the words of Ruth Gibson, the former Minister of Religious Education here, as she described what happened in that program. In our first attempt at sister church connection, she says, in a time when travel and communication was far more difficult than it is now, the Americans saw their part in the relationship as sending money to replace the church bells that were melted down for cannons. When the Great Depression came and money was scarce, the Americans dropped out of that relationship, for without money to send, they didn't see the point. Within a generation, we had forgotten our connections. The isolation of Romania under communism made communication even more difficult for our partners. It wasn't merely inconvenient to communicate, it was forbidden. Yet they remembered us, perhaps because the names of their sister churches were inscribed on those church bells. They remembered and they waited, hoping that someday we would remember them. So now back to the spring of 1991, where we received a much-awaited letter from the Reverend Jan Ogal. Once again, a connection had been made, and the Transylvanians now knew that indeed we were still here. Indeed, we did remember. These are the words of that very first letter. Dear friends, we are very glad to know that we were included into the American Transylvanian Partner Church Network. The news was told to us this summer. We dearly remember the past sister church network, but there has never been such favorable conditions for our struggle as there are today. We have to accept that during the last 4 decades, we lived in tight isolation. We were given neither passports nor hard currency. We were not allowed to go abroad. We were also forbidden to have foreign guests or speak with foreigners. I've been the minister of the Unitarian congregation in Nagyajta for 40 years. Our church was founded in 1568. The church building is much older, built before the Reformation during the 1300s. There are 2 fortresses around the church building, one built before 1222, a protection against the Tartar invasion. The other built in 1500 during the Turkish invasion. This village, Nagyajta, is a typical Transylvanian Hungarian village. Its landscape is especially beautiful. This is a mostly Unitarian village with only a few Reformed and Orthodox people living here. This place was once a center for handcrafts and was the capital of the district in the last century. We gladly accept your invitation to be your sister church. We will do our best to make known our values and get acquainted with the American people who are famous for their love of freedom and tolerance. We invite you, please, visit us. We would be very glad if a delegation visited us from your church, but we have some hardships. We cannot speak English, though many of our young ministers do speak English well. Nevertheless, we have a common language, that of love, which may be understood by everyone. And I hope this language may become our common property. I think you can feel in my words this common language of love. I enclose a small folk art piece. We are waiting for your answer and news from you. With mine, my family's, and all our congregation's love, Jan Ogal. Now, you saw that folk art piece during our story, and you know now how we responded with an enthusiastic answer of yes and sealed our partnership. Ruth Gibson and Max Gabler took that delegation to Nagyajta in 1992, delivering that embroidery, answering in person, and beginning to write our shared common language of love. So much has happened in our partnership and in that village over the last 30 years. We have traveled to them and experienced their hospitality that I can tell you is like no other. Our partner church minister, Leventa Feketa, and his wife, Yutka, have visited us here. We now use Zoom to see them on a more regular basis, a practice that began in the early days of COVID, when the tables turned and they were now worried about us. We share the stories of our congregations, our lives, our joys, our worries. We continue to write our common language. For 30 years, we have loved one another as family, members of the same faith, holding one another in so much gratitude and love. In the past few years, the Fortress Church has been restored, with frescoes uncovered, walls rebuilt, and is now a site of former glory. For their recent celebration, a video was made, and we want to share that with you today so you can see this magical place with your own eyes.
They remembered, and they waited, hoping that someday we would remember them. There is a sadness to that statement, because it is a painful thing to be forgotten. But I hear much hope in it too. The hope of the possibility of renewal, even in the face of pain and separation. The relationship between the American Unitarians and the Transylvanian ones was strained, broken perhaps, but still present, at least on one side. It remained despite the forgetting, despite long distances, and despite the arduous barrier of the Iron Curtain. There was a connection there that could endure, despite its being broken. This persistence of relationship is the most essential quality, in my opinion, of the biblical concept of covenant, which has so deeply shaped the way in which we practice our faith in community. The stories of covenant in both the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Testaments are all between the divine and human beings, sometimes an individual, sometimes a group, sometimes the whole of our species. In case you're not well familiar with any of those stories, which is okay, biblical literacy is not a requirement to be a Unitarian Universalist, I will give you the gist. Things don't go well. Again and again, the promises made between God and humankind are broken. The connection fractures with great grief and calamity. But also, again and again, at the end of each disappointing episode, there remains a yearning to restore the relationship. to build something new together. This example of partnership, of connection stronger and deeper than any legalistic terms that could be used to describe them, is essential to the Jewish and Christian roots of our faith. It is not easy to live out, and it must be said that it expects much more of the one who is forgotten than it does of the one doing the forgetting. Applying this idea to our own individual lives and stories, we must not think that it requires us or anyone else to keep giving and giving indefinitely, no matter how much they are harmed. The Unitarians of Transylvania kept a place in their hearts and their history for their American cousins, but they did not sit idle, waiting for us to renew our partnership. They persisted and endured. They raised their children and kept their traditions. They continued their story without us, but they kept a space for when we might return to be characters in it once more. This is among the greatest challenges of life, to stay soft in the places where the wounds of the past say that you ought to be hard. Sometimes we're the ones holding that space, refusing to let our hearts harden. And sometimes we're the ones who only find a way back because someone else did the work of holding out the possibility of relationship.
Why do these partner relationships matter? Some see it as our responsibility as the wealthier UUs of this world to financially assist our partners in faith. Others say it is a recognition of our history, an honoring of where our faith began, a giving back to those who came before. I see it as one of the most transforming relationships of my life. The relationship that continually renews my faith and hope as a Unitarian Universalist, that causes me to re-examine and explore what this faith means in my life. Sometimes I ask myself, if I had to live under 40 years of oppression, if my faith was constantly under fire, and if it was the thing that put my life and the life of my children at risk day after day, would I keep it? Would I give in? József Kozeny, who was the minister of the First Unitarian Church in Budapest, was once asked what most surprised him about UUs in America. His reply was, "I am beginning to wonder if your religion is important enough to American UUs. Why do you hold your faith so far from the center of your lives?" This work, these relationships are what make this faith, this life-saving, hope-giving, redeeming faith, the center and the bedrock of my life. Where do I hold my faith? How important is it? Is it guiding my life? These questions and my answers have been the challenge and the gift of being a part of this movement. When I first visited this magical village in 2005 with our FUS choir, we were greeted with much rejoicing, with food, with dancing, and with the traditional drink of palinka, a plum brandy. I quickly needed to learn the Hungarian word terhas, pregnant, as I was in the early stages of expecting Sam. When I told them why I needed to refuse the palinka, there was much rejoicing. There were more tears. They drank the palinka, toasting me and the long life of my child. They asked me to promise to return so that they could meet their baby. That baby returned with another FUS pilgrimage in 2016. He loves that land and those people as much as his mother does. And he looks forward to returning, bringing his little brother. If you open yourself to the blessings of partnership, you can learn so very much. How to be extremely generous when living in a time of austerity. How to find joy even when living in times of despair. How to hold on to an unshakable faith even when living in times of questioning and doubt. There's a partner church bumper sticker that reads, "The most radical thing we can do is introduce people to one another." Today, you've been introduced or reintroduced to this place and to its people. I would love to invite you to join in this partnership, to talk with the folks at the partner church table in the Commons after service. I wish I could be there with you. Find out more about how you can become a part of our ever evolving, unfolding story. I promise you, you will learn more about yourself and your faith than you can ever imagine. And you will never regret learning and sharing this common language of love.
In 1648, the Congregational Churches of colonial New England, from which we are partially descended as a movement, published the Cambridge Platform. That document affirmed the essential value of congregational polity, a fancy term which confuses every first-year seminary student, but simply means that in our tradition, the local congregation is free to make its own decisions and independent of any outside authority. That same document, however, also devoted much attention to the importance of the relationships between all such free and independent congregations. Their word for this was communion. I might well call it partnership. It named 6 ways of exercising this partnership. 1, taking thought for each other's welfare. 2, consulting with and taking counsel from each other. 3, admonishing each other where wrong has been done. 4, welcoming members of one congregation who might visit another. 5, recommending members who might move permanently from one congregation to another. And 6, offering financial support to one another in times of need. You will note, I hope, that only one of those 6 points has anything to do with money, and that the first and most basic step is simply to take an earnest care for the well-being of all those other congregations to which we are connected. One of the northern, on the northern coast of New England, which is the land where this text that is so crucial to understanding our movement was composed, you may find there on the beaches a certain beachweed called sea rocket. Its green stalks look a little bit like seaweed, and its tiny 4-petaled flowers are usually either white or a light purple. Sea rocket is a hardy plant. It has to be in order to live so close to the salt water. And it has an unusual quality about it. Most plants need sunlight and water and nutrients in the soil in order to live and to grow, and especially when it comes to the water and soil part, there's only so much to go around in any one place at any one time. So if too many plants end up close together, they generally don't get along well because they're all trying to live off of the same resources. The gardeners among us understand this better than I'm explaining it, I'm sure. And I think those of us who grew up or are growing up with siblings can still appreciate some version of this. Sometimes it can feel like everything is a competition for space or for the attention of a parent. But sea rockets know when there are other sea rockets growing around them. And instead of working against each other, they work together. Instead of just growing as many roots as possible and trying to choke off their neighbors, the plants share the nutrients they're all depending on and make space for each other to grow and develop. By cooperating with one another, they become stronger, their flowers more numerous, and the beach they inhabit more beautiful. For 30 years, this congregation has kept faith with our partners in Nagyajta by taking thought of their welfare, by remembering not to forget them. On this day, when we celebrate our partnership, written in the language of love, before any language of words was shared between us, may we renew our commitment to honor that bond.
By wood, smoke, and oranges, path of old canoe, I would course the inland ocean to be back to you. No matter where I go to, it's always home again, to the rugged northern shore, and the days of sun and wind, in the land of the silver birch, cry of the loon. There's something about this country that's a part of me and you. We nosed her in by Peckasaw, out for 15 days to set paddle and the spirit at the mercy of the waves. Our one-agains were loaded down and the gifts left on the shore, for it's best if we surrender to the rugged northern shore. In the land of the silver birch, cry of the loon. There's something about this country that's a part of me and you. The waves smash the smoky cliffs of Old Woman Bay, where we fought against the backswell, and then we're on our way. I would talk with you of spirits by the vision pits we saw them walk the agate beaches of the mighty Gargantua. In the land of the silver birch, cry of the loon. There's something about this country that's a part of me and you. I've turned my back upon this thing, tried to deny the coastline of my dreams, but it turns me by and by. It tossed the mighty ship around, smashed the lighthouse doors, sent shivers up my spine. Oh, the rugged northern shore, in the land of the silver birch, cry of the loon. There's something about this country that's a part of me and you. Oh, the land of the silver birch, cry of the loon. There's something about this country that's a part of me and you.
always home again to the rugged northern shore and the days of sun and wind.
Each week, we bring ourselves to this time and this place, carrying with us all the joys and sorrows of recent days. We share these here in a spirit of acceptance, knowing that they are held in love. This week, we light a candle for Lori Schwartz, who lets us know that Dante Standiford turns 10 on May 27th. Dante was dedicated here on April 6, 2014. Lori requests our ongoing dedication to this young one by donations of school supplies or volunteering at one city school to tutor students or assist in some other way. Dorrit Bergen asks us to light a candle of happiness for the visit of her nephew and niece and their 4-year-old son, whom Dorrit met for the first time. What a joyful few days. We light a candle in solidarity with the people of Ukraine, both in their suffering and their struggle. Together we yearn for peace for them and for all people, and an end to all wars of conquest anywhere and everywhere on earth. And I invite you to join me now in a prayer of springtime with these words from George Tiger. O power of springtime, spirit of green grasses and warm breezes, spirit of creativity, of birth, of life renewed, you sing all about us at this time. The birds call your sacred name, buds burst forth with your vestment, the sun reaches higher into the sky, shining the light of this new day through the windows of your cathedral, this world. O power of springtime, forgive us our speediness and our racing before your eternal grace, that we do not see the miracle world we share. Open our eyes with your warmth and our hearts with your beauty. Slow our minds with awe and wonder. Dear spirit of green grasses and warm breezes, let us find here in these moments of quiet the grace of your breath as we breathe into our bodies the spirit of spring. Blessed be, and amen.
There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding us.
Please rise and body your spirit for our closing hymn, number 76, For Flowers That Bloom About Our Feet. For flowers that bloom about our feet, for tender grass so fresh and sweet, for song of bird
May we leave here today ever thankful for the persistence of flowers and open ourselves to their long wisdom. Often they grow in spite of terrible winters and miserable summers. May we remember that strange beauty greets us in unexpected places, as if there is a particular grace that is stronger than indifference. When we tend our gardens with love and care, the reward will be greater than the effort. May the flowers ever speak to us of wonders and glories yet to be, of hopes fulfilled if we remember to tend our gardens and our homes with patience and wisdom and love. I would remind you, friends, please do take a flower home with you after the postlude. Blessed be, amen, and please be at rest for the postlude.
My mother, when love is gone, my mother, when love is gone, in our darkest hour hope lingers on. My father, when peace is gone, my father, when peace is gone, in our darkest hour hope lingers on. I will not hate, and I will not fear in our darkest hour. Hope lingers here. My sister, when equality's gone, when equality's gone, in our darkest hour hope lingers on. My brother, with tolerance gone, with tolerance gone, in our darkest hour hope lingers on. I will not hate, and I will not fear in our darkest hour. Hope lingers here, my love. When honor is gone, when honor is gone, in our darkest hour hope lingers on. My country, when justice is gone, gone, when justice is gone, in our darkest hour hope lingers on. I will not hate, and I will not fear in our darkest hour. Hope lingers here. I will not hate, and I will not fear in our darkest hour. Hope lingers here.
So we're not going to like, okay, no, we're just going to cancel that because we need to label all the 16 that we produced in the last 2 weeks that I haven't gotten to yet. This is the fight of the yeah, well, we're hiring, the conference I'm hiring people. It's fun, but it doesn't go crazy.
Remember Ben is leaving this afternoon. He was taking his bike to the right. No, he said he was. Last time.